it's Erin here from the Memory Box Project. Welcome to this week's reminiscence video, and the theme of the video today is childhood. So it's a nice pleasant subject to talk about, and I've got a little plan here of things that we can discuss. So the first question I have for everybody in the group is, what is your earliest memory? I like asking this question because it's very different. People tend to vary in how early they can remember things. Some people it's maybe 4 or 5, and some people it's when they were very little, but maybe perhaps 2 years old. Personally, I think my first memory, I think I was about 2. It's very fuzzy and vague, but it was my birthday and I got a cake with a clown on it. And I remember we were living in a masonette at the time. And I have checked with my mum, and I do think it's a real memory, so I'm quite proud of that one. The rest of it's quite fuzzy. So what is your earliest memory? And what were you doing and who were you with? So why don't we have a chat about that as a group for a second, and then we'll move on to the next part. So my next question would be about families. Obviously, who you live with and where you were brought up and how you were brought up has a massive influence in your life. Can anyone discuss the size of their family? So did anyone have a very, very big family, or perhaps it was just you and your mum, or you and your father? And how did that affect the way you grew up? There's also lots of situations where you may not have a stereotypical family unit, so you may have lived with your grandparents or another relative. Unfortunately, you may have lived in a children's home or been evacuated for quite a long period of your early childhood. Talk about where you lived and what it was like there with your relatives or the people that you lived with. Do you have happy memories of growing up? And if not, what were the good parts, and what things do you reminisce on with happy memories? So be that playing with your friends or your siblings, and where would you like to go back to? What was a happy day that you remember? If you did have lots of siblings, I would imagine that you had to share quite a lot of things. And this is a frustration of children. If you didn't have a lot growing up, then obviously things were much more valuable. You may not have lots of toys or lots of places to play or lots of things to play with. So what was the situation with sharing? What was the situation with sleeping arrangements as well? So you may have even had to share a bed. So perhaps there would have been a bed with 2 or 3 siblings sharing, maybe top and tail. Did the boys stay with the girls? So I think sometimes, for propriety's sake, boys and girls will obviously be separated, and there would sometimes be lots of one gender in one room and perhaps just one in the other. So, for example, a young lady might get a room of her own, whether her brothers were crammed in together. I'd love to hear your stories of growing up, perhaps sharing toys as well. So were there a lot of toys to go around, and did you have to share? I've put on the list as well as hand-me-downs. So where do you sit in the age of your siblings is a good question. So I'm the eldest of 3. So luckily for me, I usually got brand new. So I was the oldest child, and I was also the oldest grandchild of 7. So I was the first to get everything, which is not always the case, especially if you're the youngest. So having hand-me-down clothes or hand-me-down toys, or something like an old bicycle. So you might have had the bicycle that your older siblings have already battered and you're not used to getting new things. If anyone's a middle child, do you agree with the stereotypical middle child syndrome? Or perhaps the middle child actually turned out to be the best one? I'd love to hear about the dynamics between sibling relationships. So have a chat about that. So let's talk about toys. So things you might play with. So if you grew up during the war or after the war, it might have been difficult to find toys, especially if there wasn't a lot of money going around. So did your family ever make toys for you? Perhaps your father or your grandfather was good at carpentry, or your mother or your grandmother might make you a rag doll, or teach you to do some knitting or some French knitting to keep you occupied, or making rag rugs or something like that. But in terms of actual toys, what did everybody have? Did anyone have a dolly? And what was she like? Was she a sort of homemade doll, or was she a rag doll, or something like a China doll? And did she have a pram or a cot and lots of lovely clothes to wear? And do you remember her name? You may have had a teddy or something like that. As an example, I've got one here. These are quite modern, but this was very popular when I was a child. They're called beanie bag babies. And this one's actually called Erin. My sister bought this for me as reminiscent of my childhood. But did anyone have a teddy bear, and do you still have it? So my childhood teddy bear was called Rosie, and I got her when I was about 3, and my sister's looking after her now, but we do still have her. She's had eyes sewn back on and all sorts of things. So I'd love to see if anybody's still got any of their childhood toys. Because it's lovely that things can stay in the family and just remind you of good times as a child. Other examples of toys might be something like this. So this is a little dog that you would pull along on wheels. So he's Fisher Price. People might remember buying these for their own children. He's very sweet. He's holding a shoe, just like my dogs do, like to chew on shoes. Or this here, which is a slinky. So people might remember these. They can walk down the stairs if you make a staircase out of books, or you can get him to walk down the stairs. That's quite a lot of fun. What other things might you have had? Maybe a cap gun for playing cowboys and Indians. A slingshot for the young boys. If you didn't have a lot of toys, you might have played different games as well. So let's have a chat about the games you might have played in the street, if you're allowed, or out in the woods with your friends. Have a chat about that. So playing games in the street, we might play knock or run, leapfrog, tag, stuck in the mud, blind man's buff, climbing the lampposts, I hear quite a lot as well. There's also some, what's in here, excuse the noise, marbles. The larger marbles here. Who had a collection of marbles? Would you play them in the street and try and knock your opponent's marbles out? And did you get to keep their marbles when you were finished? We used to love playing with marbles as children and make sort of marble runs for them. So either dig lines in the ground or make one out of tubes and cardboard and things to watch them go and race the marbles. I've also got some of these. So this is a modern version of the game. They've got these sort of knucklebone shaped metal, I don't know what you call them, but I know the name for them is jacks. So jacks, knucklebones, or 5 stones. So if you want to play jacks with, you also get a bouncy rubber ball. So this one has quite a cool one in there. And the jacks come in 2 different colours. So we've got silver and gold. And I believe you would bounce the ball, and whilst the ball was in the air, you had to grab a certain number of jacks. So it's to test your reflexes, see how quickly you could do it. Did anyone else play jacks? Were you any good at it? I've never been very agile, so I'm not very good at anything that requires speed or dexterity, or coordination for that matter. But I'd love to hear any other games that people used to like to play. Let's think of some others. So Cat's Cradle. I used to love Cat's Cradle. So having the long string and passing it from partner to partner in the playground. And also clapping games. So and get faster and faster and faster until one of you breaks with the rhythm, and then you have to start again. Also got a yo-yo, a wooden yo-yo here. So yo-yos have been popular for years. Did you have a yo-yo to play with? What about something like a hula hoop, or if you're a little bit younger, maybe a space bopper, or we used to have stilts, like wooden stilts to play on, so that was a lot of fun. What kind of things did you have to play with? What were your favourite things to do? Some children preferred to be quiet and maybe read or colour, and some children would be out causing trouble and trying to burn up some energy up trees and making dens and things. So I'd love to hear, what kind of child were you, and what did you and your friends like to play? So was anybody a reader as a child? So we've got some ladybird books here. This one's all about writing. So learning books. I used to really like books about animals as a child, so I used to have lots of animal books and just look at the pictures and learn what they are. Unfortunately, I've kind of forgotten most of it as an adult. But lovely ladybird books there. And we used to have lots of stories, sort of Snow White and things like that. I think they've done hundreds of different stories, so people might remember reading these to their own children. Got another book here, small book of poetry, and this one is an annual for Eagle. So Eagle is a popular young children's comic book. So this is a sort of a conglomeration of lots of different comic strips from Eagle. So down there, I think it's safe to say this was probably aimed at young boys. But there's also obviously annuals for girls. So School Friend or Bunty. The Beano, which is, I think, enjoyed by girls and boys, and the Dandy as well. So what things did you like to read? I think comics were probably a bit more fun to read than actual books, but I'm sure you did have to do a bit of reading at school. Did anyone read proper children's books? So I'm thinking things like perhaps stories such as Enid Blyton books, so The Famous Five, or Secret Seven. And also stories like Treasure Island or Kidnapped or something like that. The sort of classic books I used to like read. Gulliver's Travels is another one, so sort of adventure stories for children. If you have a favourite book, let us know. It's always fun to talk about reading. Getting a love of reading when you're young is great because it sets you off for life for being an avid reader. And then the last thing is poetry for children. So I had a favourite poem when I was a child, because it was so strange, and you've probably all heard it. It's called The Owl and the Pussycat, so I'm going to do a reading of it now, and hopefully you enjoy it, and let us know if you have any favourite poems that you used to like as a child. So children's rhymes. So we were talking about clapping games earlier, so one that springs to mind for me is a sailor went to sea to see what he could see. But all that he could see was the bottom of the deep blue sea. So that's the one that sticks into my head when I think of school. What other rhymes might you have said as a child? So we've got the classic nursery rhymes, Little Miss Muffet, Bar Black Sheep, Little Jack Horner, that sort of thing. Has anyone got a favourite? Jack and Jill? Has anyone got a favourite rhyme or song they used to sing as a child? I know at children's parties, traditionally you may do some dancing, some children's dances, so things like The Farmer's in His Dell, or Oranges and Lemons is another one that has a special dance to it. What are your memories of that? Can anyone remember any tunes? Perhaps have a little sing-song. So this is The Owl and the Pussycat by Edward Lear, and it was written in 1871. So it's been around for a long time. And bear with me, because I haven't done any readings in a long time, so let's get started. The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money, wrapped up in a £5 note. The owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a small guitar. Oh, pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are, what a beautiful pussy you are. Pussy said to the owl, you elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married, too long we have tarried, but what shall we do for a ring? They sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the bong tree grows, and there in a wood a piggy-wig stood with a ring at the end of his nose, with the ring at the end of his nose. Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling your ring? Said the piggy, I will. So they took it away and were married next day by the turkey who lives on the hill. They dined on mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon, and hand in hand, on the edge of the sand, they danced by the light of the moon. The moon, they danced by the light of the moon. I don't know why I love that poem so much, because it doesn't really make much sense, but I hope that cheered everybody up. If you've enjoyed today's session, then there's plenty of other activities in our weekly downloads packs. So if you head to our website, www.wessexheritagetrust.org, and go to downloads, Heather has put everything in a zip file for you. If you have any problems downloading, then please get in touch with us and we will talk you through how to download everything. Or if it's easier, we can email them straight to you. All of our activities this week are themed around childhood, so there's crosswords, word searches, colouring, all sorts of things to have a bit of fun, relax and bring back some memories. We'd love to hear from you or have any pictures or feedback if you've enjoyed it. And until next week, I shall say goodbye. So thanks for joining us and see you next time. Bye.